So I came across a CBC News Saskatchewan video titled, "Do United States Care That Canadian Tourism is Down?" And it caught my eye because of the comments left in the video. We already know that places like Bellingham miss British Columbians. Well, not everyone in Bellingham, only the ones that have businesses. But the second highlighted comment is something I actually agree with, and it's something that's come up in conversation before. Do they really miss us, or do they really just miss the money? So we're going to talk about that later. We also have two snowbirds who decided to take this winter off from traveling to the United States, for the reasons that we're very familiar with. I keep showing these stories to counter the reports that we see from the US media saying, we're still seeing tons of snowbirds. Sure, you might be seeing some, but there are still thousands of snowbirds who have clearly said no to the United States. So I'm going to keep showing them. We also have a CTV report showing fewer flights going to the United States and more flights heading farther south. On top of that, I'm going to share some stats from one of our viewers and members, YUL Spotter. He works in the airline industry, and he helped me to compile some data for all of you guys. So today we're going to get into all of that in this video. The backdrop for today comes from Gail, who sent in this winter photo from Port Dover, Ontario. Appreciate you sending this over. And if you're able to, Gail, I'd love to see the exact same shot, just in the summer to compare. So send it over if you have another photo. All right, let's get started with the first report from the two snowbirds who decided to take the winter off from the United States.
With the new administration coming in and all the rhetoric that was going on, we decided, that along with the drop of the Canadian dollar were the two deciding things to say, yeah, maybe it would be good to take a year off and until things kind of settle down and that. So last fall we decided that we would do that, or last spring, I guess.
In the spring, yeah.
So these snowbirds, like thousands of others, decided that they're done with the United States. What's happening south of Canada has simply become too much for them. I've had Canadian snowbirds and even European snowbirds email me to say that they're done with the United States the moment the orange guy started his rhetoric. So this couple situation is not unusual at all. And I can personally vouch for that, because I've had many people reach out to me saying the exact same thing. I know I often say that I get a lot of emails, and I actually do. But at this point, I passed the 2,000 mark, with more than 100 still unread. And keep in mind, I only shared my email publicly, I think in August. So on that note, I do want to apologize to anyone I haven't been able to reply to yet. I might not be able to get back to everyone, but I do try to read them whenever I can. Now this next part, I want everyone to listen very closely, and also pay attention to what they said about the I-94 form.
Okay. It was crazy because we were under the impression, like all the websites that we saw said that you had to do the I-94. And do it online because it's quicker. You won't have to do it when you get there. So I did them online, paid the $30 each, which was $30 Canadian, $60, which turned out to be $85 US. And then we get up to the window and she asked us all the normal questions and we told her, but she saw these papers on my lap. So she said, well, what are those papers? I said, well, that's our I-94. Oh, well, if you did that, you have to go inside. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So we went inside and the fellow in there, he was very nice, but he looked at us and he said, what are you doing here? Like, are you Canadian? And we said, yes. And he said, well, why are you in here? Well, because we did this I-94. Why did you do that? He said, well, because all the websites told us to.
Now, we've had it hammered down our throats by the Trump administration that Canadians must fill out this form if they want to stay in the United States for more than 30 days. I mean, let's be honest, we all know it's a cash grab. But there have been reports in the past, very similar to what this couple experienced, where the CBP officer said there was no need for this form at all. And this right here, the confusion on whether the form is actually required, is what worries me the most. I genuinely think that it's going to get a lot of snowbirds in trouble, especially those who are already in the United States and didn't fill out the form because they were told it wasn't needed. When CBP officers are saying one thing and the US federal government is saying another, this creates a perfect storm. All it takes is for one Canadian to get checked for something to go very wrong.
He said, well, all of that is just fluff.
Yeah,
he said, it's all wrong. You didn't have to do it. You've wasted your $60, $85, because you didn't have to do that. And because you have, Now you have to be fingerprinted and have your picture taken or whatever. So he said, if you know anybody that's coming down, tell them they don't have to do that. There's nothing has changed. It's all the same as it always has been.
Now, who do you trust in this situation? CBP or the US federal government? It's like choosing between the devil and the devil's father. Either way, the lack of transparency, the lack of confirmed rules, and the clear lack of alignment between CBP and the federal government just makes me even more wary about going south if I were to stay longer than 30 days. Think about this scenario. You don't fill out the form. You're staying in the States for a few months. You think everything is fine because when you entered, the CBP officer told you didn't need it. Then when you return to the Canadian border, and we know there are border checks just before you get to the Canada side, or maybe you're randomly picked by ICE or CBP, and they ask you for your I-94 form. Do you honestly think they're going to accept the answer, oh, the guy at the border said I don't need it? I don't know. That's just something I would never want to deal with. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my take on this. And if you do and you're not already subscribed, it would genuinely mean a lot to me if you help out my channel by hitting the subscribe button below. Now moving on. We have a report that looks at the declining number of Canadian flights going to the US and where these flights are going instead.
The departure board at Vancouver International Airport tells the story at a glance. Fewer flights heading south and more heading farther afield. Nationwide, data from the aviation firm Cirium shows Canada-US flight volumes dropped more than 14% year over year.
And 62% of Canadians said they would not be traveling to the US for 2026. And
62% is a pretty solid number if you ask me. One of the things we have to remember is that 2025 numbers may have been padded a bit. Why? Because a lot of Canadians already had pre-booked their US vacations back in 2024, or sometime before the orange guy took office January 20th. I personally know a few people who still went on with their US trips last year, simply because their flights and hotels were non-refundable. For them, it would have been too big of a financial hit just to walk away from it. But after their trip was done, they're done with the US. And that is why I believe 2026 is going to show an even bigger drop. We won't have those pre-booked non-refundable trips helping to pad the numbers like we saw in 2025.
part of those reasons was politics, exchange rate, as well as border hassles.
Here at YVR, the decline in U.S. travel has been significant, but more modest than other parts of the country, down 6.5%. But overall traffic here is actually up about 3%.
So 2025, we don't have final numbers, but it will be our busiest year on record in the history of the airport.
So this pretty much shuts down any of the trolls or haters who say that Canadians don't have the money to travel, and that's why we're not going to the United States. That's not it at all. The fact that YVR is having one of its busiest years on record shows that Canadians are still flying. And it's not just outbound. I'm sure inbound travel into Vancouver has gone up as well.
So we're seeing more people flying, they're just flying differently.
Vancouver's strong international connections are softening the blow from declining U.S. travel. Passenger traffic between Vancouver and the Asia-Pacific region is up more than 15%.
Normally I would bounce through LAX, but I'm staying within the Canadian Airlines.
But instead, this Ontario traveler opted to fly direct from the Philippines to Vancouver to avoid the U.S. altogether.
Extra headache, extra trouble at the border, more security protocols here at the airport here. You're in, you're out.
I couldn't agree more with this passenger. There are a lot fewer headaches when you connect through Canada versus a place like Los Angeles or San Francisco, and you completely avoid having to interact with CBP altogether. But what you're seeing now in this freeze frame appears to be the international departures area at YVR. I can recognize the Cathay Pacific signs in the background, and it's packed. It was also packed when I flew out late last year as well.
Experts say this trend isn't a short-term blip, but a consumer-driven shift that's having a real impact.
This is one for the history books. This charge we've seen in terms of economic impact on the U.S. is not led by the government. This one's led by consumers, by you and I.
And with international travel continuing to grow, experts say Vancouver passengers should expect more overseas options and more demand as airlines keep redrawing the map.
He's right. This isn't a government-mandated movement. It's being led by regular Canadians and international citizens like you and me. We're making the choice with our wallets, not to support the United States tourism industry or its businesses. And this is why it's completely different from anything the US has faced in the past. COVID, 9/11, natural disasters, those situations are not the same as what we've seen over the last year and what's coming up. Now, I want to show a few screenshots that one of our viewers and members, YUL Spotter, helped to compile for us. He works in the aviation industry and has definitely helped me offline to better understand the commercial side of things. What we're seeing right now are cancellations with Air Canada. Routes from Vancouver to Washington, Tampa, Nashville have all been canceled. Montreal to Detroit and Minneapolis have been canceled. Toronto to Indianapolis has also been canceled as well. We're also seeing a lot of reduced frequency at the 3 largest Canadian airports. And one thing to keep in mind is that this list does not factor in aircraft changes. For example, and this is just me picking a destination in Canada and the US. Say, for example, if Montreal to Miami went from 14 weekly flights to 12, that might not sound like a lot, but that route could have shifted from an Airbus A330 to an Airbus A320, which is a significant drop in seat capacity. And let's not forget, some of these flights might not be full on the way down. This next screenshot, Air Transat, shows an overall capacity reduction of 15% to the United States, along with reduced frequency to Orlando and Fort Lauderdale. Flair Airlines canceled 3 routes altogether early last year and reduced overall capacity by 25%. All of this adds up, no matter what the haters say. It's just another piece of the puzzle that lines up perfectly, with all the reports coming out of the United States saying they miss the Canadians. Moving on, Porter Airlines reduced overall capacity by 15% and canceled routes to Boston, Newark, and Washington, D.C. WestJet has an overall seat capacity reduction of 8.5%. They've also canceled routes to Austin, Orlando, New York, with reduced frequency to New York and Orlando. And again, keep in mind, we don't always know whether or not the daily or weekly routes have also seen aircraft changes to smaller planes. But I do know for a fact that this has happened. Also remember, this isn't a complete data set. It's a set of data just to show the viewers. There are still other routes and additional Canadian airports that aren't even included in this sample list. All of this data comes from OAG, the BC Aviation Council, and PAX News. I want to thank YUL Spotter for compiling all of this from the data sources. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what the full end of the year 2026 data looks like. Now moving on to the last report for this video. CBC heads south of the border to see whether or not the US states actually care if Canadians are visiting or not.
Minot, North Dakota has long been a popular destination for Saskatchewan residents. But in 2025, they saw a steep decline in Canadian visitors. Data from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection shows fewer Canadians traveled from Saskatchewan to the United States last year, down roughly 60,000 visitors from 2024.
We would go maybe once a year to North Dakota, and my daughter went to school in Minot, so yeah. So we did in the past, but would I go now? No.
And Minot's tourism board says it's feeling the drop.
It's roughly about 20% down for the whole year. Canadians have been an important part of the Minot economy for a long time. And there's a long relationship of that, right? It's decades, right? Since we're so close to the border, we get a ton of people coming across, or we have historically.
Now, I know this is just another report from another state and another border town saying that they miss Canadians. We obviously know that they're hurting financially. But I saw a comment in one of my videos that really stood out to me, and I'm paraphrasing here. It basically says something like this. All of these US businesses and border towns that are suffering, they call us their friends, their family. They talk about our shared history and all of that stuff, blah, blah, blah. It actually said blah, blah, blah. But have any of them actually come up to Canada to show their support? Or is this friendship always one-sided, with Canadians heading south? It was something along those lines. So here's a question. Are these border towns supporting us the way they want us to support them? Something to think about. Let me know in the comments below if you heard any US border businesses coming up to Canada to show their support.
In Montana, communities are seeing a similar drop.
Currently to date, we're down almost 16%. There are other destinations within Montana that I know are down more than 20%.
But many say they have no intention of going anytime soon.
Seeing how it is now and how, the anti-immigration policies and everything that's going on, basically, it's more discouraging to go. So if I had a choice, I would not go. I would rather stay.
In the meantime, many in the States are hoping 2026 will bring a friendlier relationship with Canada.
Let's also remember who Montana voted for. Some of those small business owners, tourism officials, and executives may very well have been part of that 58% who voted for the orange guy. I understand this is yet another border state report showing struggling businesses, but I think it's important to show all of them, and here's why. We have viewers all across Canada, and with today's report, I genuinely think that people in Saskatchewan might be glad to see that their efforts are causing real economic pain in places like Montana and North Dakota, areas they are actively boycotting. I don't want this channel only focus on Bellingham or the state of Maine and only showing their struggles. But at the same time, when I do see reports out of Bellingham, I know my fellow British Columbians are clearly making an impact. So regardless of which border town it is, I'm going to keep showing these reports. Because if I can show one viewer in Saskatchewan today that their boycott is affecting North Dakota and Montana, then I'm happy to give them that information to my fellow Saskatchewan Canadians. Alright, that's all I have for today's video. If you found any value in anything I said today, or you enjoyed the overly active co-host in the background, please help out the channel by hitting the like and subscribe button below. And for the record, I have been giving her treats the whole time I've been editing this video. I don't think it works anymore, so I'm going to have to think of something else. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.